Hi, I'm Mark Megna again. This is the second video of my discussion of Metaphysics of Being, Something from Nothing, which is a book that I wrote. This is the cover. The cover has on it forward circles. You can see there's larger circles, smaller circles, and infinitely smaller, which I thought was a fairly good cover for it. So just to review of some of the things that we talked about the first video, I depicted this circle here, which depicted everything in the universe, and how that goes out infinitely externally as well as infinitely. It goes into an infinite regress internally as well. So in effect, there is something everywhere in our conception of the universe, not only externally but also internally as well. We talked about some paradoxes when you try to define that most fundamental unit. Euclid, who wrote the Book of Elements, tried to define the most fundamental unit, which he called a point, and he said that is which has no extension, which has no parts. So that seems to be somewhat of a paradox, because there is something there, but he needed to call the most fundamental unit something that was nothing. So to expand now, his second definition is a line is composed of points. So when you think of a line, it is composed of points all the way through. So we had our most fundamental unit, which is that which had no extension, which was nothing. And now we have a line, which is something composed of all of these nothings all along the way. So here's the foundation of the paradox that starts to develop when you try to think about the universe in its totality. And all of these concepts relate to space as well as time, of how we try to get to that most fundamental unit. Where is that beginning point? And we cannot quite conceive of it. So just to read another paragraph out of my book and continue on. The world appears to go on forever, not only externally but internally as well. No matter how small a piece of matter or space-time becomes, it can always be made smaller through an infinite regress. It approaches a limit of zero size, yet never reaches it. Oddly enough, no matter how small it goes, it is still infinitely larger than the smallest below it. And again, as Euclid said, a dimensionless point or focus is the center of the circle. Every piece of something is made of nothing. So in my book, I actually have two circles here to try to think about this. And the first one says that nothing encapsulates the totality of something. So here's our something, and out here is all of the nothing, which encapsulates it. And then a second circle, which is a something which encapsulates the totality of nothing. So looking at it in the reverse, when you try to get to the bottom of all of this, you have these two paradoxes. Again, nothing encapsulates the totality of something, and something encapsulates the totality of nothing. Picture the inner space going inward towards infinity. It never ends. It is bounded by nothing. Infinity merges with nothingness, since it can never be reached. The concept of infinity is analogous to the concept of nothing. Neither one can ever be realized or experienced. They are in effect one and the same. Within each piece of something is nothing, since it is infinitely divisible. The inner space of nothingness not only goes infinitely in, but also is preeminent throughout. It is nothing throughout from top to bottom. Within every incremental something is an infinite nothing. So if we think about this something encapsulating a nothing at its very core, if we accept that as a premise, then throughout this totality of everything, there are infinite nothings that make it up. Just as the line was composed of points, which were made up of nothing, no extension, and become something, the totality of this circle is also made up of that. So in Euclid, again, when he said that a point is that which has no part, that's the foundation of everything, he then went on to say a line is composed of points, which we looked at here, and then the center of the circle is infinite and never can be reached due to an infinite regress. So then you start getting into a surface is composed of lines, which are composed of nothing. A sphere is composed of dimensionless surfaces, which are nothing. And three-dimensional objects, such as the ones we view in space, are composed of units of nothing at their most fundamental level. So once you accept this, in mathematics that Euclid wrote in his Elements, and this is still viewed today in science, that the most fundamental unit is that which has no part, and then that which was nothing starts to compose the lines, the circles, the spheres, everything. It just is a great paradox and doesn't make any sense whatsoever. Nothing is the only thing that is not infinitely divisible. Therefore, it is the most fundamental unit in nature. As we said, no matter how small, if Euclid would have said this is 1/millionth, or whatever size, 1/100th or 1/millionth small of the totality, it would have not been small enough. No matter how small you said this fundamental unit was, it still needs to be smaller if we were to look at the most fundamental unit. And in physics, they've looked at atoms and down to a lot of other particles now that they keep finding and theorizing are smaller and smaller, which are the fundamental units in the world that we see. Yet in a philosophical sense, it can never get to the end of what is that most basic unit. So that's kind of interesting as we proceed forward. Every conceived something is by nature infinitely far away from nothing. A finite number line is composed of an infinite number of points, such as this line going in both directions to infinity, and there's an infinite number within it. Therefore, you can never reach the next step on a finite number line. It is there and not there at the same time. This is reading from the book here. So if we had a line, and if we were to say, here's our beginning, and then to get to the next step, what is the next number on a number line, you cannot take that first step, because that is basically 1 over infinity, drops down, and there is no concrete step to say, if this is our starting point, what is that first point that we start to move on out into infinity. And this is just absolutely amazing to think about. In our world, obviously, if we were starting here, we have to step here and here and here and here and so forth. So we step on some concrete, arbitrary, or scientifically necessary concrete quanta in space-time that allows us to move forward in that time. Whereas theoretically in metaphysics, there is no first step. So with that, I'll leave that for now and be back. Thank you.